stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I am kicking off my review of Dim Carcosa, the final Mythos pack in the Path to Carcosa cycle, with a look at the Guardian cards. I have split up this review of this Mythos pack into 6 parts, so make sure you check out the reviews for the cards in the other classes when you have a chance. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. All the player cards in this pack are going to cost you some amount of experience, a fair amount of experience in some cases. So with that in mind, let's get started. The first Guardian card in the pack is Eat Lead. It's a free event that costs 2 experience points. It has combat and agility skill icons and the tactic trait. It has the game text Fast. Play when you activate the fight ability on a firearm asset. You may spend X additional ammo tokens from that asset. When you reveal chaos tokens for this attack, reveal X additional chaos tokens. Choose one to resolve and ignore the rest. Now, Chaos Bag Manipulation is great if you can get it, because it's the type of ability that will flat out win you games that you should have lost. If you're not convinced, try taking Wendy Adams' Grotesque Statue, Sure Gamble, or Will to Survive for a spin. It's a great feeling when you're about to resolve a skill test and you know that you can either draw multiple chaos tokens, change the value of the chaos tokens, draw another chaos token if you don't like the first one, or simply avoid drawing chaos tokens altogether. Unfortunately, Guardian investigators haven't had any access to Chaos Bag Manipulation of any sort up to this point, and Eat Lead changes all that, which makes this card a tantalizing option when you're upgrading your deck. Eat Lead basically lets an investigator turn his or her firearm into a grotesque statue for 1 action. If you take a fight action with a firearm, you can spend an extra ammo token to draw an extra chaos token. You could even spend multiple ammo tokens if you like, so if you absolutely positively need to shoot an enemy in the face, Eat Lead will certainly tip the odds in your favor. Eat Lead is also useful if you're equipped with a firearm that uses the Succeed by X mechanic. The most obvious example in the Guardian class is the shotgun from the core set. The shotgun's damage increases for each point you succeed by on the skill test, so drawing multiple chaos tokens improves the odds your shotgun blast will land for 5 damage rather than 1. You could also consider playing Eat Lead in Schizo Tool to fish for that additional action if you're using the level 241 Derringer. Speaking of the shotgun, that brings us to the biggest problem with Eat Lead, and that is that most firearms in this game don't have a lot of ammo tokens to spare, especially if you're playing a scenario with a lot of enemies. Unless you're packing the 32 Colt, which enters play with 6 ammo, you're probably only going to be able to spend maybe 1 or 2 extra ammo tokens during that fight action before you need to reload. If you're using Eat Lead with that aforementioned shotgun, you're only going to get 1 shot, and 1 shot only, and that's not particularly great. Ammo tokens are usually in such short supply in my games that Eat Lead feels like the type of card I'm going to play sparingly, if at all, during a scenario. In all likelihood, I'd probably try to save it for a really important enemy, such as a boss at the end of the scenario. And I think when you look at Eat Lead in that context, its opportunity cost goes up quite a bit, and the card starts to lose some of its luster. Now, if you're thinking about including Eat Lead in your deck, you may also want to consider including cards such as Extra Ammunition from the core set or Contraband from the Miskatonic Museum. Both give you more ammo tokens to spend during that critical fight action. You may even have enough ammo tokens left over to play 2 copies of Eat Lead. Suddenly, packing that shotgun and Eat Lead becomes a lot more viable if you've got access to extra ammunition. It's also worth noting that Eat Lead, extra ammunition, and contraband are tactic and supply cards respectively, so you can fish all three of them out of your deck before you start the game with stick to the plan. That could really come in handy if you know you're going to face an enemy that you simply cannot afford to miss. If you're playing Schizo Tool, you can pair Eat Lead with Sleight of Hand to drop a firearm into play, burn an ammo token with Eat Lead, and then bounce the firearm back to your hand at the end of the turn. Burning an ammo token to draw an extra Chaos token becomes a lot easier when you've got a relatively easy way to refresh those ammo tokens and use them and have access to them turn after turn. If it turns out you don't need to play Eat Lead, it never hurts to have an extra agility icon in your Guardian deck. Guardians are great at dispatching enemies, but sometimes it's better off to evade than fight, especially if you haven't drawn your firearm yet or you're running low on ammo tokens. Now, that's it. I wouldn't spend 2 experience points on the Eat Lead just for the agility token. But in the event that flight is a better option than fight, at least Eat Lead is still somewhat helpful. Considering that Eat Lead is such a situational card, I think it could almost have used, it might have been better off if it had the 2 agility icons rather than just 1, but that's just some wishful thinking on my part. Now, Fantasy Fight spoiled Eat Lead a few months ago in its preview article for Dim Carcosa, and I'll admit the card didn't really make a big impression on me at first glance. However, the more I thought about it, the more I started to like it, at least in certain situations. Chaos Bag Manipulation is an extremely powerful ability, especially on hard or expert difficulty, where the ability to pick and choose the token you draw can go a long way to mitigating some of that variance in the Chaos Bag. You can also run into kill or be killed situations regardless of the difficulty you're playing on, where an investigator's fate really hinges on the outcome of a single shot. Eat Lead can be a real lifesaver in that type of showdown. That said, ammo tokens are a finite resource in this game, so if you're probably saving Eat Lead for an emergency. That means the card is going to sit in your hand waiting for the right moment to play it. And I'm not really sure that I'm willing to spend 2 experience points on a card with such a high opportunity cost. The second Guardian card in the pack is the Armor of Ardennes. It's a 4-cost asset that costs 5 experience points. It has 2 willpower and 2 combat skill icons and the item, armor, and relic traits. It takes up the body slot and has 4 health. It has the game text response. When damage is assigned to Armor of Ardennes, exhaust Armor of Ardennes. Cancel 1 of that damage. Now, Armor of Ardennes is the very definition of Guardian bling. It's expensive, ostentatious, and it's a luxury that really bolstered the class's already impressive health values while really doing nothing to shore up its chief weakness, that is, its lower sanity values. I've played Guardian Investigators in the Night of the Zealot, Dunwich Legacy, and the Path to Carcosa campaigns, and it's a very rare scenario indeed where I've been concerned about my Investigator's health value. Guardians really have health for days, and most of the scenarios I've encountered, with the possible exception of one like the Essex County Express, are far more likely to drive a Guardian insane than kill them outright. And so when I upgrade my Guardian deck, sanity, combat skill value, and damage output are all much higher priorities than health, which means a card like Armor of Ardennes is unlikely to make the cut in my decks, unless I'm really flush with experience points and I've purchased everything else I need. The Armor of Ardennes seems like it was tailor-made for Mark Harrigan, a Guardian who is very sensitive to the amount of damage on his Investigator card. But I'm not sure I'm in much of a hurry to purchase it for his deck either. In my experience, Mark already has plenty of tools at his disposal, including allies, assets such as True Grit, and events such as Emergency Aid to deal with any damage he suffers, most of which is self-inflicted anyway. And the Armor of Ardennes won't help you if you're taking direct damage, which is really Mark's stock and trade. Now, if you really are desperate for some extra health, there are cheaper options than the Armor of Ardennes to fill the body slot. If you're looking for bargains, there's the Bandolier from the Essex County Express, or Fine Clothes from Where Doom Awaits. Both cards are quite cheap and have useful abilities, depending on your build or the scenario. When I play the Path to Carcosa campaign, I usually remove a Fine Clothes from my decks after the Last King. But I didn't have a chance to do that in my Mark Harrigan deck during a recent multiplayer campaign. At first I wasn't very happy about that, but it turned out to be really pleasantly surprised by Fine Clothes. Sometimes you just need a cheap way to soak a point of damage or horror, and Fine Clothes worked out really well in that role. And so lately I've been including it in a lot more decks, just to take that point of damage or horror, and it only costs a resource, so that's fantastic. And if experience points are in short supply, and which is not uncommon if you are playing in solo, you can dust off the trusty bulletproof vest from the core set. You give up 2 skill icons and the damage cancellation, but the vest does cost fewer experience points and resources than the Armor of Ardennes. Now, I've seen some players on the forum suggesting that you can play Armor of Ardennes with the Smoking Pipe from the Miskatonic Museum. The Smoking Pipe lets you take a damage to heal a horror, and if you're equipped with the Armor of Ardennes, you don't take the damage, so you're effectively healing a horror for free. That's a pretty cool combination, and I would definitely consider playing it if I picked up the armor. But the armor is just so damn expensive. It's really hard to pull the trigger on that purchase. I think it's really interesting to compare the Armor of Ardennes to Stick to the Plan, the other big ticket item that Guardians received this cycle. Both cards cost a pile of experience points, but the impact they have on the board state couldn't be more different. Stick to the Plan has proven to be an absolutely stellar card in the Mark Harrigan deck I've been playing in a 4-handed campaign. If I drop an emergency cache and an Ever Vigilant on it at the start of the game, Mark sets up quickly, and he just tends to snowball from there. The Armor of Ardennes just seems really, really, just meh in comparison to that sort of power. It's also interesting to compare the Armor of Ardennes to the Key of Ys, another 5 experience point card in this pack. If the Armor of Ardennes is a glorified bulletproof vest, then the Key is really a glorified Elder Sign amulet. And I'd say the Key definitely got the better end of that design bargain. Canceling 1 damage a round is okay. Potentially adding 3 to your skill values across the board round after round, that's really incredible. I haven't had a chance to play with the Key yet, but I would certainly make it a priority well ahead of the armor. Given the big health values on Guardian Investigators, the nature of the 3 campaigns that are currently available, and the plethora of cheaper options for extra health, it's really difficult to justify spending 5 experience points on a glorified bulletproof vest. Now, that could certainly change in the not-so-distant future. We've seen a lot of cards this cycle that seem to suggest that swarms of enemies could become a thing, at which point enemy management and damage mitigation become paramount. If you're engaged with multiple enemies turn after turn, the Armor of Ardennes response will certainly help a Guardian mitigate some of that damage while he or she gets a handle on the situation. The armor also becomes indispensable if you're getting pinged for damage round after round, whether by environmental effects or locations in play or treacheries coming off the top of the encounter deck. Those types of effects are fairly common in the Lord of the Rings, FFG's other cooperative LCG, and I expect them to crop up in Arkham horror scenarios at some point down the road. I haven't had a chance to play Dim Carcosa yet, but I understand there is some constant damage in that scenario, so it would make sense that they would put the Armor of Ardennes in that pack if that's the case. and who knows, maybe down the road we'll see a dedicated Guardian investigator with low health with a low health value, at which point the armor of Ardennes starts to look a lot more appealing in that type of investigator. That's going to do it for my review of the Guardian cards in Dim Carcosa. Neither of these cards are going to shake up my Guardian decks, at least in the short term. I like Eat Lead in theory because it has the potential to swing a key combat skill test in your favor. However, the limited availability of ammo tokens, coupled with the fact that you're probably saving this card for an emergency, raises its opportunity cost. Ultimately, I think that cost may prove to be too high to pay. I could see experimenting with this card in combination with Stick to the Plan and extra ammunition, though. And as for the Armor of Ardennes, it feels like a really expensive luxury item for the Guardian who has everything right now. But that could change in future campaigns. If the scenarios in the Forgotten Age push damage rather than horror, this card's stock goes up in a hurry. But I think for now I'm quite content to wear my fine clothes when I go out to confront the dangers of the mythos. That's going to do it for me today. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.